A strange light filled the sky as a massive alien ship descended into Earth's atmosphere. It moved silently, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the sun. The people of New York City stopped what they were doing to stare upward. Cars slowed down on the streets, and pedestrians froze in place, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. The ship was enormous, dwarfing even the tallest skyscrapers. Its shadow stretched across the city, darkening the busy sidewalks below. Inside the alien vessel, Commander Vrel stood at the control panel, studying the planet through advanced sensors. Beside him, Tessa, his second-in-command, watched the readings carefully. Her elongated head tilted slightly as she processed the information. "This is Earth," Vrel said, his voice calm but curious. "According to our archives, it is classified as low threat. But why? What makes this world so unremarkable?" Tessa glanced at him. "Perhaps we will find out soon," she replied. The two aliens had traveled far to investigate this mystery. For centuries, Earth had been labeled as insignificant in the galactic records, but no one seemed to know exactly why. Now it was their mission to uncover the truth. On the ground, Jack Monroe stood by his apartment window, holding a camera in one hand. His wife, Laura, stood beside him, her arms wrapped protectively around their young daughter, Emma. "What do you think they want?" Laura asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Jack didn't answer right away. He adjusted the lens of his camera, focusing on the massive ship hovering above the city. Whatever was happening, he knew it was big news. As a journalist, he couldn't resist the chance to document it. "Do you think they're here to hurt us?" Laura asked again, glancing down at Emma, who was staring up at the ship with wide, curious eyes. Jack shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." He grabbed his jacket and slipped his camera into its case. "Stay inside." "Okay. I'll be back soon." Outside, the streets were crowded with people pointing at the sky and taking photos with their phones. Some looked excited, while others appeared scared. Jack pushed through the crowd, trying to get closer to the center of the action. He noticed that the ship wasn't making any noise, which made it feel even more unnatural. It just hung there, motionless, as if it were waiting for something. Then, without warning, a bright beam of light shot down from the ship. It landed in the middle of Times Square, creating a perfect circle of illumination. People gasped and stepped back, unsure of what would happen next. From the light emerged a holographic projection, a tall, slender figure with smooth gray skin and large, almond-shaped eyes. Beside it stood another alien, shorter but equally striking. They introduced themselves as Vrel and Tessa, representatives of the Zolothian Empire. "We are explorers seeking knowledge," Vrel said, his voice echoing clearly despite the lack of visible speakers. "Your planet has been labeled non-threatening in our archives. We wish to understand why." The crowd murmured in confusion. Jack raised his camera, snapping pictures as fast as he could. He noticed something odd about the aliens' demeanor. They didn't seem hostile or aggressive. In fact, they almost looked bored, as if they expected nothing interesting to come from this visit. Jack frowned. If Earth was truly considered low threat, then why had these aliens come all this way to study it? As the crowd buzzed with questions, Laura called Jack's phone. "Be careful," she said when he answered. "Please come back soon." Jack promised he would, but he couldn't tear himself away. Something about this moment felt important, not just for him, but for the entire world. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a story that would change everything. The aliens' announcement left the world in a state of shock and confusion. After their initial message in Times Square, Vrel and Tessa remained silent for hours, leaving humanity to wonder what would happen next. Governments scrambled to respond, holding emergency meetings and trying to figure out how to communicate with the visitors. Meanwhile, people around the globe gathered around TVs, phones, and computers, glued to every update about the alien ship. Jack Monroe, still clutching his camera, stayed near Times Square, unwilling to leave. He could feel the tension in the air. Some people whispered prayers, while others debated loudly about the aliens' intentions. "Do you think they're here to take over?" one man asked nervously. "Or maybe they're just tourists," joked another, though no one laughed. Jack didn't join the conversations. Instead, he focused on capturing everything: the faces of the crowd, the glowing projection of the aliens, the eerie silence beneath the massive ship. Finally, after hours of waiting, the aliens made contact again. This time, they addressed humanity directly through a series of holographic projections that appeared all over the world. From New York to Tokyo, from London to Sydney, people watched as Vrel and Tissa spoke in calm, measured tones. Their words were translated perfectly into every language, thanks to some unseen technology. "We are not here to harm you," Vrel began. "We seek only to understand your species." Tissa stepped forward, her large eyes scanning the crowds as if she could see everyone watching. "Your planet is labeled low threat in our archives," she said, "but we do not fully understand why. We have come to observe and learn." Her voice carried no hint of anger or urgency, just curiosity. Jack snapped photos furiously, capturing every detail of the holograms. He noticed something strange. The aliens seemed almost unimpressed. There was no grand declaration of power, no threats or demands. Just questions. It was as if they had already decided Earth wasn't worth worrying about. But why? What made humanity seem so harmless? Back at home, Laura tried to keep things normal for Emma, but it was hard. The little girl kept asking questions Laura couldn't answer. "Are the aliens nice?" Emma asked, hugging her stuffed bear tightly. Laura forced a smile. "I think so, sweetheart. They say they just want to learn about us." But deep down, she wasn't sure. She worried about what might happen next. Over the next few days, the Zalothians began their investigation. They sent smaller ships to hover over cities, scanning buildings, streets, and even forests. These ships emitted soft hums as they worked, their lights pulsing rhythmically. People watched nervously, unsure whether to run or stay put. Some tried to approach the ships, waving or shouting, but the aliens ignored them completely. Jack followed the story wherever it led him. One day, he traveled to Central Park, where one of the smaller ships had landed briefly. A group of scientists was already there, setting up equipment to study the area. "Did you see anything unusual?" Jack asked a young researcher named Emily. She shook her head. "Not really. Just some kind of energy reading. Whatever they're doing, it's beyond anything we've seen before." As the days passed, the Zalothians grew bolder. They started abducting small groups of humans, using beams of light to pull them aboard their ships. At first, people panicked, fearing the worst. But those who returned, like Sarah Bennett, a farmer from Iowa, and Daniel Cruz, a mechanic from Texas, told strange but similar stories. The aliens weren't cruel. They asked questions about human emotions, conflict, and survival. "They wanted to know why we fight each other," Sarah explained during an interview, "and why we destroy our own planet." Daniel added, "They showed me pictures of other worlds, places that looked dead, like nothing could live there anymore. Then they asked if we ever felt guilty for ruining ours." Jack wrote an article summarizing these accounts, speculating that the aliens weren't just observing. They were testing humanity. But for what purpose? And what would they do once they had their answers? Laura read the article late at night, sitting by the kitchen table. "You think they'll leave soon?" she asked when Jack came home. He shrugged, looking tired. "I don't know, but I have a feeling this isn't over yet." As the days turned into weeks, the presence of the aliens became part of everyday life. Yet beneath the surface, questions lingered. Why had they come? What did they truly want? And most importantly, what would they decide about Earth and humanity when their investigation was complete? The Zalothians continued their study of Earth with a mix of curiosity and detachment. Every day, their smaller ships scanned different parts of the planet, from bustling cities to quiet villages, from deep oceans to dense forests. They seemed particularly interested in human behavior, watching how people interacted with each other and their environment. Jack Monroe followed their movements as closely as he could, documenting everything for his growing series of articles. He noticed patterns in their actions. They weren't just observing. They were probing, testing humanity in subtle ways. One morning, Sarah Bennett, the farmer from Iowa who had been taken aboard one of the alien ships, appeared on a national talk show. She described her experience in detail, explaining how the aliens had asked her questions about farming, family, and survival. "They wanted to know why I work so hard to grow food," she said, her voice calm but tinged with confusion. "I told them it's because my family depends on it. But they didn't seem to understand why I'd do something just for someone else." Daniel Kruse, the mechanic from Texas, shared a similar story. During his time aboard the ship, the aliens had shown him images of broken machines and asked if humans ever felt guilty for creating things that harmed the planet. "I told them we're trying to fix it," Daniel explained. "But they kept asking, 'Why did you break it in the first place?' It was like they couldn't wrap their heads around it." Jack listened to these accounts carefully, piecing together what he could. The aliens weren't just gathering information, they were trying to understand human motivations. Why did people fight? Why did they destroy? And why did they keep trying to rebuild? These questions haunted Jack as he worked on his next article. He decided to focus on the positive aspects of humanity, highlighting stories of kindness, creativity, and resilience. "If they're studying us," Laura suggested one evening, "maybe we should show them our best side." Inspired by her words, Jack began interviewing ordinary people doing extraordinary things. He talked to teachers who spent extra hours helping struggling students, volunteers who cleaned up parks, and artists who used their work to bring communities together. Each story gave him hope, reminding him of the unique qualities that made humanity special. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens' interest went deeper than curiosity. They were testing humanity, though he still wasn't sure why. Meanwhile, the Zolothians grew more puzzled by what they found. Inside their massive ship, Vrel and Tissa reviewed the data collected from their scans and interviews. "Their emotions are complicated," Tissa remarked, scrolling through reports on a glowing screen. "They can be cruel and kind in the same moment, logical and irrational, predictable and completely unpredictable." Vrel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And yet, they survive. Despite their flaws, they adapt and endure." He paused, staring at an image of children playing soccer in Central Park. "Look at this. They cooperate without coercion. No one forces them to follow rules or work together, yet they do it naturally." Tissa tilted her head, but they also turn on each other with startling ease. One moment, they share laughter, and the next, they shout and argue. "How do they function like this?" "It's chaos," Vrel replied. "But perhaps that is their strength. Chaos is unpredictable. To underestimate it would be dangerous." Back on Earth, Jack published his latest article, titled Humanity's Hidden Strengths*. It quickly gained attention, sparking conversations across the globe. People began sharing their own stories of hope and connection, inspired by Jack's message. Even Laura joined in, organizing a small community event to clean up a nearby park. "If the aliens are watching," she told Jack, "let's give them something good to see." As the days passed, the Zolothians intensified their efforts. They started conducting experiments. The Zolothians decided it was time to push humanity further. They had gathered enough data from their observations and experiments, but they wanted to see how humans would react under extreme pressure. One evening, as the sun set over New York City, a holographic message appeared in the sky. The glowing image of Vrel addressed the world, his calm voice echoing across continents. "A large asteroid is approaching your planet," he announced. "It will impact within 48 hours. Panic spread like wildfire. News outlets immediately began reporting on the impending disaster. Scientists scrambled to analyze the situation, while governments held emergency meetings to discuss evacuation plans. People rushed to stores, buying supplies and preparing for the worst. Social media exploded with posts, some filled with fear, others with anger or disbelief. Jack Monroe watched the chaos unfold from his apartment window. The streets below were crowded with people shouting and running in different directions. Laura paced the living room, clutching Emma's hand tightly. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jack didn't have an answer. He grabbed his camera and headed outside, determined to document what might be humanity's final days. As the hours passed, the situation grew worse. Traffic jams clogged highways, and airports overflowed with desperate travelers trying to escape. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of descending into complete chaos, communities began coming together. Neighbors shared food and water with those in need. Volunteers organized shelters for displaced families. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, pooling resources and ideas to find solutions. In Iowa, Sarah Bennett opened her farm to anyone seeking refuge. "We've got room," she told the local news. "If this is really the end, let's face it together." In Texas, Daniel Cruz led a team of mechanics repairing generators and vehicles to help transport people safely. Even in cities like New York, strangers helped each other carry supplies or comfort crying children. Jack captured these moments on camera, his heart swelling with pride. Despite the fear, humanity was showing its best side. He interviewed a teacher who had stayed behind to care for her students, a doctor working tirelessly at a makeshift clinic, and a group of teenagers distributing bottled water to the elderly. Each story reminded him of what made people special, their ability to care for one another even in the darkest times. Up in their ship, Vrel and Tissa watched the unfolding events with growing interest. Screens displayed images of human cooperation and resilience. "They are responding differently than I expected," Tissa admitted, her tone thoughtful. Vrel nodded. "Their capacity for unity under pressure, it's remarkable. And yet, they still struggle with fear and doubt." By the morning of the second day, the asteroid had not appeared in Earth's skies. Scientists confirmed that there was no sign of it anywhere. Confusion replaced panic as people realized the threat had vanished as mysteriously as it had arrived. Governments demanded answers, but the Zolothians remained silent. Jack returned home, exhausted but hopeful. Laura greeted him at the door, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "Do you think it was all fake?" she asked quietly. Jack sighed, setting his camera down. "I don't know, but whatever it was, it showed us something important. We're stronger than we think." Later that evening, Vrel and Tissa reviewed the results of their simulation. "This confirms it," Vrel said firmly. "Their unpredictability is their greatest strength. To dismiss them as harmless would be a mistake." Tissa agreed. "But there is also beauty in their chaos, a beauty we have forgotten." The aliens prepared to leave, their mission nearly complete. They now understood why Earth had been labeled low threat, not because humanity lacked power, but because their true strength lay in qualities the Zolothians had long overlooked. As the massive ship ascended into the sky, Jack stood on his balcony, watching it disappear among the stars. He felt a strange mix of relief and wonder. Laura joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked softly. Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe. But if they do, we'll be ready." For now, life on Earth returned to normal, but the encounter left a lasting mark. Humanity had faced its fears and proven its resilience, and somewhere out in the vastness of space, the Zolothians carried with them a newfound respect for the tiny blue planet and the unpredictable species that called it home. The Zolothians called one final meeting before leaving Earth. Once again, their holographic projections appeared in Times Square, drawing massive crowds of curious onlookers. People gathered nervously, unsure what to expect. Would the aliens reveal their true intentions? Were they here to conquer after all? Or had they simply finished their study and were ready to depart? Vrel and Tissa stood side by side in the glowing projection, their calm expressions giving nothing away. Vrel began speaking, his voice clear and steady. "We have observed your species closely," he said. "We now understand why Earth is labeled low threat in our archives." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jack Monroe stood near the front, his camera ready. He leaned closer, straining to hear every word. Laura and Emma stayed home this time, watching the broadcast on television. Across the globe, millions tuned in, holding their breath. To other civilizations, Vrel continued, "You appear weak because you lack advanced technology and weapons. Your planet is small, your resources limited. But we underestimated you." He paused, glancing at Tessa, who nodded slightly. "Your unpredictability makes you unique. You adapt, survive, and thrive despite overwhelming odds. To dismiss you as harmless would be a grave error." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Vrel raised a hand, silencing them. "However, this does not mean you are ready to join the galactic community. Your conflicts, your destruction of your own environment, these are obstacles you must overcome. Until then, you remain unremarked upon." Tissa stepped forward, her large eyes scanning the crowd. "Your greatest strength lies in your connections, your ability to unite under pressure, your creativity and resilience. These are qualities many advanced species have forgotten." As the alien spoke, Jack felt a mix of emotions: pride, relief, and even a little sadness. Humanity had passed some kind of test, but the encounter left him with more questions than answers. What did it mean to be labeled low threat? And what would happen if another alien race came to Earth someday, one less curious and more hostile? When the speech ended, Vrel added one last remark: "We leave you with a gift. Use it wisely." With that, the holograms vanished, and the massive ship began to ascend into the sky. A small object descended from the craft, landing gently in the center of Times Square. It was a device no larger than a dinner plate, its surface smooth and metallic. Scientists rushed to examine it, but it didn't respond to their tools. Hours later, they discovered its purpose: it could purify water instantly. News of the gift spread quickly, sparking debates about its potential uses. Some saw it as a symbol of hope, proof that humanity could rise above its flaws. Others worried it might lead to greed or misuse. Jack wrote an article about the device, focusing on its implications for solving global water shortages. "Perhaps this is their way of saying they believe in us," he told Laura as he typed late into the night. Laura smiled faintly. "Or maybe they're just being polite before they leave." The next morning, the alien ship disappeared completely, vanishing into the stars without a sound. Jack stood on his balcony, staring at the empty sky. The city below returned to its usual rhythm, but something had changed. People seemed more aware of each other, more willing to help. Inspired by the recent events, communities around the world began working together to address problems like pollution and inequality. Jack's articles gained international attention, earning him recognition as one of the leading voices on the alien encounter. Yet he remained humble, crediting Laura and Emma for keeping him grounded. "This isn't my story," he often said during interviews. "It belongs to everyone." In the weeks that followed, life on Earth slowly returned to normal. But the lessons learned from the Zolothians lingered. Governments collaborated more openly, sharing knowledge and resources. Artists and writers drew inspiration from the event, creating works that celebrated human resilience. Even children like Emma played games imagining peaceful encounters with extraterrestrial visitors. Up in space, Vrel and Tissa filed their report, updating Earth's status in the galactic archives. "Low threat," they wrote, "but high potential." Other civilizations read those words, wondering what secrets Earth might hold, and whether they too should pay a visit someday. For now, humanity was safe. But Jack knew the universe was vast, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As he looked up at the stars, he couldn't help but wonder, what else was out there? And when would Earth hear from them again? The days turned into weeks after the Zolothians' departure, but the impact of their visit lingered. The small device they left behind became a symbol of hope and curiosity. Scientists worked tirelessly to understand its full potential, while world leaders debated how best to use it. Jack Monroe followed the story closely, writing articles that explored both the practical applications of the gift and its deeper meaning. "This isn't just about clean water," he wrote in one piece. "It's a reminder that we're capable of more than we think." Laura noticed a change in Jack as he poured his energy into covering the aftermath of the alien encounter. He seemed more optimistic, more determined to highlight the good in humanity. Inspired by his work, she joined a local group focused on community projects. Together, they organized food drives, park cleanups, and workshops for kids. Even Emma got involved, helping her parents plant trees in a nearby lot. "Maybe this is what the aliens wanted us to see," Laura said one evening as they sat together, "that we can do better if we try." Across the globe, similar efforts sprang up. People drew inspiration from the Siluthians' words, realizing that their unpredictability, the very thing that made them seem chaotic, was also their greatest strength. Artists painted murals celebrating human resilience. Teachers emphasized teamwork and creativity in classrooms. Engineers collaborated across borders to tackle challenges like climate change and resource shortages. It was as if the encounter had awakened something in humanity, a desire to prove that they were worth noticing. But not everyone shared this optimism. Some feared the aliens would return, perhaps with less friendly intentions. Conspiracy theories spread online, claiming the Zolothians had planted spies or hidden technology on Earth. Others worried that humanity might misuse the water-purifying device, leading to conflict over who controlled it. Jack addressed these concerns in his writing, urging people to focus on unity rather than division. "We've faced bigger threats before," he wrote, "and every time, we found a way to come together." Meanwhile, in space, Vrel and Tissa continued their journey, reflecting on what they had learned from Earth. Their unpredictability makes them fascinating. Tissa remarked one day as they reviewed their data, "They're flawed, yes, but there's beauty in their imperfection." Vrel nodded. "I wonder if we've grown too rigid, too focused on order. Perhaps there's value in embracing chaos, even just a little." Back on Earth, life moved forward, but the memory of the aliens remained fresh. Jack often thought about their parting words. Low threat, but high potential. What did that mean for humanity's future? Would other civilizations take notice? And if they did, how would humanity respond? One evening, Jack attended a town hall meeting where locals discussed ways to prepare for another possible alien encounter. Some suggested building defenses, while others argued for focusing on peaceful solutions. Jack listened carefully, jotting down notes for his next article. When someone asked him what he thought, he stood up and spoke honestly. "If they come back," he said, "let's show them we've learned from their visit. Let's be better, not because we're afraid, but because we know we can be." His words resonated with the crowd, sparking applause. Later that night, as Jack walked home, he felt a sense of quiet pride. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was trying. That was enough for now. At home, Laura greeted him with a warm smile. "How was the meeting?" she asked. Jack shrugged. "Same old fears, same old hopes. But I think people are starting to get it. We're stronger when we work together." Emma ran up to him, holding a drawing she'd made at school. It showed a spaceship surrounded by smiling stick figures. "This is us," she said, pointing to the picture. "And this is the aliens coming back to say hi." Jack laughed, ruffling her hair. "I think they'd like that." As he tucked Emma into bed later that night, Jack glanced out the window at the stars. The universe was vast and full of unknowns, but for the first time, he didn't feel afraid. Whatever came next, humanity would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that was all the preparation they needed. Months passed, and the world settled into a new rhythm. The Zolothians' visit became a part of history, discussed in classrooms, written about in books, and debated on television. The water-purifying device they left behind transformed countless lives, especially in regions where clean water had been scarce. Villages that once struggled to survive now thrived, their children healthier and their crops more abundant. Jack Monroe documented these changes, traveling to remote areas to capture stories of hope and renewal. "This is what happens when we work together," he often said, his voice filled with quiet pride. Laura noticed how much Jack's perspective had shifted since the encounter. He no longer chased headlines just for fame or recognition. Instead, he focused on telling stories that mattered, stories that reminded people of their shared humanity. She admired him for it, even as she teased him about spending too much time away from home. "You're turning into a global ambassador," she joked one evening as he packed for another trip. Jack grinned. "Someone's got to keep reminding everyone we're all on the same team." Emma, now 8 years old, soaked up her father's adventures like a sponge. She filled notebooks with drawings of aliens, spaceships, and Earth united under a single flag. Her classmates loved her stories, especially the ones about how humans had proven their strength to the Zolothians. "We showed them we're special," she declared during show and tell, holding up one of her pictures. Her teacher smiled. "Yes, Emma, you did. But not everything was perfect. Some governments argued over how to distribute the benefits of the alien technology, while others hoarded resources for themselves. Conflicts still flared in certain parts of the world, though they were quieter now, overshadowed by the memory of global unity during the simulated asteroid crisis. Jack wrote about these struggles too, urging readers not to lose sight of the lessons learned. "The Zolothians didn't call us weak because we fight," he wrote. "They called us strong because we find ways to rise above it." Far away in space, Vrel and Tissa continued their journey, sharing their findings with other members of the Zylothian Empire. Their report sparked debates among their own kind. Some dismissed Earth as unworthy of further attention, while others argued that humanity's unpredictability made it worth watching. If they continue to grow, Tissa told a council of elders, they could become something extraordinary. Vrel added, their flaws are also their strengths. Perhaps there is wisdom in embracing imperfection. Back on Earth, life went on, but the encounter had left a lasting mark. Artists painted murals of stars and spaceships alongside images of hands reaching out to help one another. Scientists studied the alien device, hoping to unlock more of its secrets. Teachers encouraged students to dream big, reminding them that humanity's potential was limitless. Even small acts of kindness, a stranger helping an elderly person across the street, a child sharing snacks at school, felt significant, as if everyone understood how precious their connections truly were. One day, Jack received an invitation to speak at an international conference about the future of humanity. Nervous but excited, he prepared his speech carefully. When the day came, he stood before a crowd of scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens, his heart pounding. "The Zylothians taught us something important," he began. "They showed us that our greatest strength isn't in our weapons or technology. It's in our ability to adapt, to care for each other, and to imagine a better world. If we hold on to that, then whatever comes next, whether it's another alien visit or just the challenges of living on this planet, we'll be ready." The audience erupted into applause, and Jack felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. This wasn't just his moment. It belonged to everyone who had worked to make the world a little brighter since the aliens' departure. That night, as he lay in bed, Laura turned to him. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" she asked softly. Jack thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe. But if they do, I hope we'll have even more to show them." Outside, the stars twinkled silently, their light stretching across endless distances. Somewhere out there, the Zolothians moved on to explore new worlds, carrying with them the memory of a small blue planet and the unpredictable species that called it home. For now, humanity was safe, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was beginning to understand its place in the universe. A strange light filled the sky as a massive alien ship descended into Earth's atmosphere. It moved silently, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the sun. The people of New York City stopped what they were doing to stare upward. Cars slowed down on the streets, and pedestrians froze in place, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. The ship was enormous, dwarfing even the tallest skyscrapers. Its shadow stretched across the city, darkening the busy sidewalks below. Inside the alien vessel, Commander Vrel stood at the control panel, studying the planet through advanced sensors. Beside him, Tessa, his second-in-command, watched the readings carefully. Her elongated head tilted slightly as she processed the information. "This is Earth," Vrel said, his voice calm but curious. "According to our archives, it is classified as low threat. But why? What makes this world so unremarkable?" Tessa glanced at him. "Perhaps we will find out soon," she replied. The two aliens had traveled far to investigate this mystery. For centuries, Earth had been labeled as insignificant in the galactic records, but no one seemed to know exactly why. Now it was their mission to uncover the truth. On the ground, Jack Monroe stood by his apartment window, holding a camera in one hand. His wife, Laura, stood beside him, her arms wrapped protectively around their young daughter, Emma. "What do you think they want?" Laura asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Jack didn't answer right away. He adjusted the lens of his camera, focusing on the massive ship hovering above the city. Whatever was happening, he knew it was big news. As a journalist, he couldn't resist the chance to document it. "Do you think they're here to hurt us?" Laura asked again, glancing down at Emma, who was staring up at the ship with wide, curious eyes. Jack shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." He grabbed his jacket and slipped his camera into its case. "Stay inside." "Okay. I'll be back soon." Outside, the streets were crowded with people pointing at the sky and taking photos with their phones. Some looked excited, while others appeared scared. Jack pushed through the crowd, trying to get closer to the center of the action. He noticed that the ship wasn't making any noise, which made it feel even more unnatural. It just hung there, motionless, as if it were waiting for something. Then, without warning, a bright beam of light shot down from the ship. It landed in the middle of Times Square, creating a perfect circle of illumination. People gasped and stepped back, unsure of what would happen next. From the light emerged a holographic projection, a tall, slender figure with smooth gray skin and large, almond-shaped eyes. Beside it stood another alien, shorter but equally striking. They introduced themselves as Vrel and Tessa, representatives of the Zolothian Empire. "We are explorers seeking knowledge," Vrel said, his voice echoing clearly despite the lack of visible speakers. "Your planet has been labeled non-threatening in our archives. We wish to understand why." The crowd murmured in confusion. Jack raised his camera, snapping pictures as fast as he could. He noticed something odd about the aliens' demeanor. They didn't seem hostile or aggressive. In fact, they almost looked bored, as if they expected nothing interesting to come from this visit. Jack frowned. If Earth was truly considered low threat, then why had these aliens come all this way to study it? As the crowd buzzed with questions, Laura called Jack's phone. "Be careful," she said when he answered. "Please come back soon." Jack promised he would, but he couldn't tear himself away. Something about this moment felt important, not just for him, but for the entire world. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a story that would change everything.